between fellow South Africans. And I raised the issue of Afriforum taking Malema and the EFF to the sheriff for costs of nearly 340,000 rand in a video a couple of days ago. Now, I said to you at that time that let's wait and see how the EFF respond. And yes, they have on SABC News, and you'll see the interview in a second. And the fellow who is representing the EFF, their Secretary General, Godfrey Gadi, I don't know if you've ever heard of Godfrey, but that's who it is. He's on the news with SABC, and he makes some fairly radical and inflammatory comments. And perhaps the most inflammatory is he says, Afriforum are heating up the drums of war. And that comment is just allowed to go without a response by the interviewer, which I find extraordinary, because that's very inflammatory. And he goes on even further, and you'll see this in the interview, and he says, the whites, who are very racist in this country, there will come a time that we will deal with them properly. Now, remember Malema's comment about we're not calling for the murder of white people in this country, and then he qualifies it by saying, yet. This is what we're talking about. Their whole indoctrination is about the destruction of the white community. Now, the final thing that he says, which again you'll see in this interview, is that when we become the government in 2019, we're going to make sure that what the justice system rules, i.e. in this case with Afriforum versus the EFF, is just kicked aside. So they have absolutely no interest in justice, okay? The EFF are an anarchistic political party. They have no interest in justice. Their main aims are to just seize the land and destroy the country and rape and pillage every single cent that they can. And do you know who that's going to benefit? China. Because China is sitting in the wings now like the black widow spider, waiting to come on in, like it is in Kenya and it already has in Zambia. In Kenya right now, China is now not nationalizing. China is now taking over the ports, the banks, the electricity grid, a huge number of infrastructure areas within Kenya. China is actually taking over Kenya right now. It's happening right now. It's quite extraordinary. South Africa is the jewel in the crown that they want, and they're just waiting for idiots like these Goons and the EFF to just destroy South Africa, and then they'll come up and just say, hey, we'll help you guys out, we'll sort this out. And it will then become a Chinese colony. Okay, guys, remember to subscribe to be kept informed, and here comes the interview between the EFF and SABC News discussing the cost case that Afriforum have won. Alrighty, see you later.
Welcome back. Now, Afriforum has obtained a warrant to seize movable assets of Julius Malema and the economic freedom fighters. For the EFF's response, we're joined now by the Economic Freedom Fighters Secretary General Godfrey Gadi. You'll remember, of course, we spoke to Afriforum a little earlier this evening. Now, you watched that interview with Ian Cameron, and they've basically said, whether you want to argue merits, whether you want to argue procedure, this is where we are. The court has granted this cost order. Pay up?
Well, as a matter of fact, it's that a cost order, for it to be paid up by the losing party, it should be taxed. there should be a notice of taxation. And according to the records of the economic freedom fighters and our attorney of record, we have never received a notice of taxation, and we're never invited to the taxation by the taxing master of the bill of cost. And accordingly, it's just a grandstanding by the Afriforum. The fact of the matter is that the Constitutional Review Committee will be sitting on this coming Thursday, and before the end of this term of Parliament, the land will have been returned to its own people.
But that's not the case. That's not what the case here is about. This case was specifically around the calls made by Julius Malema for people to take occupation of vacant land in the way that he's described. You lost that. You didn't even file on time. That's what's before, that's what the issue is at hand now. It's got nothing to do with the wider land debate, which may well come to the outcome that you are talking about, but we're not there yet.
Bongani, the Freedom Charter says the people shall choose and occupy a piece of land wherever they see it, and a land of their choice. I think the people who should actually be interdicted are those people of 1955. Is actually the ruling party after 1994, and to date, even including Indian National Conference, they've taken that decision. And if Afriforum thinks that courts will resolve a political issue, I'm not certain where do they think this government and this country has got enough number of jails to put all the people of South Africa for actually contravening that interdict which says the people must occupy the land, the people must live in their places of choice, and that is going to happen unapologetically so.
Look, political sloganeering is one thing. The law is also quite something else. In this case, what Julius Malema was calling for, the court has said is against the law. That's why we're here.
Not at all. Not at all. The court did not discuss the merits of the matter. There was a miscommunication between Afriforum attorneys and the legal representative of the economic freedom fighters.
You had ample opportunities to file a response. You didn't do so. You now find yourselves in this mess, and you can't even argue that you weren't given a chance to respond because you didn't take it.
Let them do as they wish. I think Afriforum is hitting up the drums of war, and they think that they can put blacks into jails because of some petty court orders which they received without any substantive argument and merits of the issues being tested in a court of law. We have appealed that decision, and an appeal, once you note an appeal in court, it suspends a decision and a judgment that has been made.
But the point is you didn't file your papers on time. And
that is what they will say to you. The fact of the matter is that they are aware that the matter has been appealed. Firstly, it started with
This goes back to September last year, does it not?
Oh, of course. Cases can go for as long as they can move.
You had a chance in September last year. You had a chance in March earlier this year. We are now here where you haven't responded to what
we are saying to you that the first time they got a judgment against the EFF, it's what is called the default judgment. A judgment just because of failure to deliver a notice of appearance and a notice to defend. And that is not about the issues that were raised in that application. The second application that the order that they got was the issue of our application for rescission of that judgment which they received in our absence. And unfortunately, our attorneys did not have a good communication with the stakeholders around the issue and could not appear in time. However, now they've corrected the communication processes with the court and the opposing parties, and the papers have been filed in court. We are going to be on an appeal with them.
What do you say to someone who's sympathetic with your position, who agrees with the calls that Malema has been making, but who looks at your approach to this, you calling it a miscommunication? Someone might say, we're on your side, but come on, this was sloppy.
Not at all. The economic freedom fighters is involved in a lot of activities throughout the country. We are fighting the battles in many fronts, and this is one of the fronts of the Afriforum. I mean, we had Zuma to deal with. Now we have quite a lot of others to deal with in courts of law. And it can't be that Afriforum should actually be an issue that maybe we did not respond in time. In fact, we have now responded. We will meet in court with them. them, and we call upon all South Africans to pitch to turn up on that day when we appear in court and show the boors, the racist, arrogant whites of South Africa that it will never happen again in this country that whites can tell blacks where to stay and where not to stay.
Which is why, and I'm really sorry to belabor the point, which is why someone might say, don't let them have these easy victories simply on a procedural matter.
They have tried it before with quite a number of issues of a number of made up and trumped up charges against the commander-in-chief and against the EFF. We are currently attending to cases in Newcastle, another one in Bloemfontein. This is one amongst those of persecution of the economic freedom fighters by the whites, who are very arrogant and racist in this country, whom actually will come a time that will deal with them properly.
So 337,000 rand thereabouts is the figure. I mean, should you lose this, ultimately, you'll have to pay.
Definitely, we're not going to pay that money. If you...
The courts say you must pay, you have to pay.
The courts have never said that, and they will never say that.
If it ends up, because as far as the matter stands right now, that's where we are. You say you've appealed it.
I have said to you that the bill will be taxed by the master of the court. It will be far way below what you are talking about. And the day of its taxation by the master of the court, the attorneys of records of the EFF will be invited into that taxation. And it won't even come closer to that. And in fact, we will not even pay a cent. Afriforum maybe is the one that will be paying very soon.
All right. Ian Cameron says you style yourselves as a party that's championing the cause of the poor. You talk about inequality all the time. He made reference, for example, to the jewelry that the commander-in-chief wears and says we'll go for that if we must. The Breitling watch he wears. It's no longer a sell-by a narrative that is trying to push through. We know that the president actually has got nothing. SARS took everything, and he knows very well that everything was taken from the president. And the watch that he's talking about probably is a watch you saw sometimes in 2004 or 2009. I think it's just grandstanding and being very politically immature, and we will deal with him for that. Final question to you. I mean, obviously, next year is something that we're all going to be focusing on in terms of the election. Do you think these fights create even more division, particularly the fights you have with Afriforum around issues like this? Can we ever get back to a narrative about this country that brings people together rather than divides us? Afriforum is a non-entity to the EFF. They don't even deserve any comment and remark about them. They are just an irritation, and we'll deal with them in the proper way after the elections in 2019, when the EFF is in power and it calls the shots and it tells who can do what at what time, and we'll deal with racists like those Krill and Afriforum. Right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for coming in to respond to that. We'll see how that one will play out. That is, of course, the Secretary General of the Economic Freedom Fighters, Godrich Gadi. Stay with us.